The slap echoed through the entire supermarket. I was 8 months pregnant, and this woman's diamond rings cut into my cheek as I fell against the shelf. My baby. That's all I could think about. But she had no idea. My husband was watching. And what he did next? It destroyed her entire world. This is a story about cruelty, justice, and revenge that went viral worldwide. If you want to see how karma can be carefully calculated and absolutely brutal, hit subscribe right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when this woman discovers who she really messed with. Let me take you back to the worst, and somehow best, day of my life. My name is Maria, and if you saw me on the street that Saturday morning, you'd think I was just another tired, pregnant woman doing her grocery shopping. Simple clothes from discount stores, sensible shoes, maybe a little worn around the edges. You'd be right. But you'd also be missing the most important part of my story. See, I come from a place most people try to forget exists. Foster care, group homes, sleeping in my car at 19 because I aged out of the system with nowhere to go. I built myself up from absolutely nothing, got my GED, worked 3 jobs to afford a tiny apartment, and eventually found work at a small bookstore that became my sanctuary. That's where I met Nathaniel 3 years ago. He came in looking for a rare book on architecture, and we talked for hours. He was kind, thoughtful, and treated me like I mattered. We dated, fell in love, and got married within a year. I knew he was successful. He called himself a businessman, had a nice but modest home in the suburbs, drove a regular car. Comfortable, but not flashy. What I didn't know, what he carefully kept from me, was the truth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That morning, Nathaniel was unusually worried. He insisted on getting the groceries himself, told me to rest, practically begged me to stay home. But I've always been independent. Survival taught me that, so I insisted I was fine. I needed to pick up specific items for the nursery, things I wanted to choose myself. He finally agreed, but there was something in his eyes I didn't understand then. Concern, maybe even fear. He kissed my forehead and said he'd catch up with me later. I didn't know he meant that literally. The supermarket in Ashford Hills was fancier than where I usually shopped, but they had the organic baby products my doctor recommended. Walking through those automatic doors, I immediately felt out of place. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Marble floors gleamed under my worn sneakers. Other shoppers glided past in designer outfits with perfect hair and jewelry that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. I kept my head down, found my cart, and tried to shop quickly. That's when I saw her, Caroline Beaumont. Even if you didn't know her name, you'd recognize the type. Mid-40s, flawless cosmetic work, dripping in labels and diamonds, surrounded by 3 other women who laughed at her every word. I'd seen her before around town, heard the stories. People called her the Queen of Ashford Hills, but the stories I'd heard were darker than that title suggested. She was known for destroying people who crossed her, ruined reputations, ended careers, crushed businesses. Her husband Gregory ran one of the most powerful law firms in the state, and together they were untouchable, or so everyone thought. I tried to avoid her aisle, but the store was crowded and I needed items from everywhere. My back was aching, my feet were swollen, and I just wanted to finish and go home. That's when it happened, except it wasn't an accident like I initially thought. I understand now that Caroline saw me first. She recognized me as that girl who married some nobody, had heard through her social circle that I came from foster care. In her world, that made me less than human. She positioned her cart deliberately to block the aisle. I was exhausted and didn't notice the setup. When I tried to navigate around her, she moved to block me again. Her friends giggled like we were all still in high school. Finally, I attempted to squeeze past, and my pregnant belly bumped her cart because she pushed it into me at the last second. I know that now. I didn't know it then. What happened next still plays in my nightmares. Caroline exploded, not in genuine anger, but in calculated theatrical rage. She screamed about assault, clutched her hand dramatically, and the entire store turned to stare. My face burned with humiliation. I tried to apologize, my voice shaking, tears already forming, but Caroline wasn't interested in apologies. She wanted a show. Did they teach you manners in whatever gutter you crawled from? Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. People like you shouldn't be allowed in stores like this. You should know your place. I felt something inside me crumble. Those words, know your place, they brought back every horrible moment of my childhood, every time I was made to feel worthless, unwanted, less than. My hands went protectively to my belly, and I tried to back away. That's when she struck me. The slap wasn't just hard, it was vicious. Her rings caught my cheekbone and split the skin open. I felt the warm trickle of blood before I felt the pain. The force knocked me sideways into a shelf, and I went down, hitting the floor hard. All I could think about was my baby. Please let my baby be okay. I was sobbing, terrified, bleeding, and Caroline was standing over me like some kind of monster from a nightmare. But she wasn't finished. That baby will probably be as worthless as you, she said, and her friends laughed. Actually laughed. One of them was filming it on her phone. Caroline pulled out her own phone and took pictures of me crying on the floor. This is what happens when trash doesn't know its place, she announced to the store. She threatened to call the police and accuse me of assault, said her husband Gregory would bury me in lawsuits so deep I'd lose everything. They'll take that baby away from you, she hissed. You're not fit to be a mother anyway. I couldn't breathe. The panic attack was crushing my chest. Other shoppers stood frozen, too intimidated to help. The store manager approached, but Caroline cut him off with a single glare. One of her friends kicked my dropped groceries, scattering them across the floor. I was shaking uncontrollably, certain my life was over, when the automatic doors opened again. Nathaniel walked in. I've never seen him move like that. Not rushing, but walking with absolute purpose. His face was completely blank, no anger, no emotion at all. But I knew my husband, and something in that emptiness terrified me more than Caroline's rage. The entire store went silent. He knelt beside me, his hands gentle as he checked my bleeding cheek and helped me up. His whisper was so soft only I could hear it. Trust me. Just trust me. Then he turned to Caroline. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but somehow everyone heard it. What's your name? Caroline still thought she was in control. Caroline Beaumont, she said with a sneer. And you are? Nathaniel didn't answer. He just stared at her with those empty eyes, then pulled out his phone and made a single call. It's done, he said to whoever answered. Yes, everything. Then he hung up. Caroline laughed, actually laughed. Did you call your lawyer? How cute. She started bragging about Gregory, about all the families they'd destroyed before, listing names like trophies. She said her husband would crush whoever Nathaniel had hired. The whole time, Nathaniel just stood there, silent and unmoving. I could see it was starting to unnerve her, just slightly. The store manager whispered something to his assistant, and the assistant's eyes went wide. They both looked at Nathaniel like they'd seen a ghost. You think silence makes you intimidating? Caroline mocked, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. Nathaniel checked his watch. 3 minutes, he said quietly. 3 minutes until what? Caroline's laugh was forced now. Until your entire world ends. That's when a man in an expensive suit came running into the store. I recognized him from photos in the newspaper. Gregory Beaumont, Caroline's husband. His face was pale and covered in sweat. Caroline, we need to leave. Now! He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Nathaniel with absolute terror. Caroline was confused. What? Why? I'm handling this nobody. That's Nathaniel Cross, Gregory whispered, but in the silent store, we all heard it. The name meant nothing to me, but everyone else gasped. People pulled out their phones. The store manager actually took a step backward. Caroline just looked confused, but Gregory's face had gone white as paper. Oh God, Caroline, he breathed. What did you do? That's when I learned the truth about my husband, the man I'd been married to for 3 years, the man who'd kept me separate from his real world because he wanted to protect me from people exactly like Caroline. Nathaniel Cross wasn't just wealthy, he was one of the 5 most powerful men in the country. A self-made billionaire who'd built a tech empire worth $47 billion by the age of 28. But that wasn't all. Nathaniel owned the entire Ashford Hills commercial district, 60% of the luxury properties in the city, the building where Gregory's law firm operated, the bank that held Gregory's business loans, major shares in the country club Caroline frequented, stakes in 3 charity boards she chaired. He didn't just have money, he owned the infrastructure of their entire world. I stood there, bleeding and pregnant, learning that my husband was someone I didn't fully know. Gregory was literally begging now. "Mr. Cross, please, she didn't know." "She knew enough to be cruel," Nathaniel said, his voice still that terrifying quiet. Caroline's knees buckled. I watched understanding hit her like a physical blow. She tried to apologize, words tumbling out in a panic, but Nathaniel cut her off. "Now you want to apologize? After you threatened my pregnant wife? After you said they should take our baby?" His voice dropped even lower. "You wanted her to know her place. Let me show you yours." What happened next was the most methodical destruction I've ever witnessed. Nathaniel made a call, on speakerphone. His head of security confirmed that footage from 10 different security cameras had been saved and uploaded to a private server. Caroline's face lost all its color. Second call, to his lawyer. A lawsuit was being filed: assault, battery, emotional distress, defamation. The amount was $50 million. Caroline actually gasped. Gregory stammered that they didn't have that kind of money. "I know," Nathaniel said. "That's the point." Gregory tried to interrupt, tried to explain, tried to negotiate. Nathaniel looked at him for the first time. "You'll speak when I permit it." The third call was to his property management company. Gregory's law firm lease was terminated effective immediately. 30 days to vacate. No renewal option at any price. Gregory started panicking about client files and active cases. "Not my concern," Nathaniel said simply. Fourth call, to the bank. Gregory's business loans were being called in, full payment required in 90 days. "That's impossible," Gregory whispered. "Then you'll lose everything," Nathaniel replied. Fifth call, to the country club board. Nathaniel owned a 40% stake. An emergency meeting was being called about Caroline's membership. Expected outcome: immediate expulsion. Then Nathaniel turned his attention fully to Caroline, and I saw her actually shrink back. "You said people like my wife should know their place. Let me show you what happens when someone forgets theirs." He called the 3 charity boards Caroline chaired. His foundation was the largest donor to all 3. He gave them a choice: remove Caroline from leadership or lose all funding. All 3 boards chose the money. Caroline was removed from her positions within minutes while we all stood there. Her phone started buzzing uncontrollably, her so-called friends abandoning her in real time. Someone in the store had live-streamed the original incident. Caroline was already trending on social media, and not in the way she was used to. But Nathaniel wasn't finished. What he said next broke something fundamental in Caroline, and honestly, in me too. "Do you know why I married Maria?" he asked. Caroline just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Because she showed me kindness when I had nothing." Then he told a story I'd never heard. Years ago, before we met at the bookstore, Nathaniel had tested the society he was part of. He'd disguised himself as homeless to see people's true nature. He spent weeks on the streets, and I was working at a soup kitchen as a volunteer. I was the only person, the only one, who treated him with genuine dignity. I'd given him my own jacket during a brutal winter night, shared my own food, never asked for anything, never looked down on him. "She didn't know who I was," Nathaniel said, his voice finally carrying emotion. "She just saw a human being who needed help." I was crying now, understanding for the first time the depth of what we meant to each other. "You, Caroline," Nathaniel continued, "you see bank accounts, you see status. You see nothing real. You wanted to take everything from the one person who showed me humanity when I had nothing, so I'll take everything from you." The weeks that followed were brutal to watch, even for me. Gregory's law firm dissolved as partners abandoned ship. They were forced to file bankruptcy. Their mansion was foreclosed. Caroline's luxury cars were repossessed. Every social invitation was withdrawn. Former friends wouldn't return calls. I heard through the grapevine that Caroline was spotted working retail at a department store, trying to survive. The viral video hit 200 million views. She became an international symbol of toxic privilege and cruelty. The charity boards she used to lead started using her as an example in presentations about what not to be. Gregory blamed Caroline for everything. Their marriage fell apart, and divorce proceedings began. Caroline ended up in a small apartment, alone, with nothing left of her former life. My feelings about all of this were, and still are, complicated. 6 months after my daughter was born, healthy and perfect, I did something Nathaniel didn't expect. I visited Caroline. She was unrecognizable. No makeup, discount store clothes, 20 pounds lighter, eyes that had seen the bottom. When she opened her door and saw me holding my baby, she started crying. We sat in her tiny apartment and she apologized, really apologized, not the panic-driven words from the store. She'd been in therapy, working through decades of learned cruelty that her own mother had taught her. She understood she'd perpetuated a cycle of abuse and elitism that had destroyed her. I told her I forgave her, but I also told her the truth. Nathaniel won't. Not ever. I explained what I'd learned about his childhood, how he'd grown up poor, how people exactly like Caroline had destroyed his mother through their cruelty and contempt. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You became the person he swore he'd stop. Caroline understood then. She'd triggered his deepest wound, and there was no coming back from that. We parted that day, not as friends, but at peace. I heard she rebuilt her life slowly. She works at a women's shelter now, genuinely helping others, trying to undo some of the damage she caused. Nathaniel knows about my visit. He respects my choice to forgive but maintains his position. Some wounds, he says, deserve to stay open as reminders. My daughter is 2 now. She'll never know Caroline Beaumont, but she'll know this story. I'll teach her that cruelty has consequences, but so does forgiveness. I'll teach her about the balance between justice and mercy. Nathaniel protected me in the most powerful way possible. Some say he went too far. But when you've lived through what we have, when you know what it's like to be truly helpless, you understand something most people don't. Power isn't about money or status. It's about choosing who deserves your mercy. Caroline didn't choose mercy that day in the supermarket, neither did Nathaniel. So here's my question for you. Was this justice or was it revenge? Is there even a difference? Drop your brutally honest opinion in the comments. If this story made you feel something, anything, smash that like button. Subscribe if you believe actions have consequences. Share this with someone who needs to remember that cruelty always finds its match. Thanks for watching. Remember, treat people with kindness, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. See you in the next story.